I read a statistic this week that stopped me in my tracks.
Hope for people is that they give themselves the same grace that they would give to somebody else sitting in their shoes.
So I highly recommend
Gosh, I didn't know how lonely you were.
for parents that may be watching this and they're raising children with what the world classifies as special needs.
Finding yourself again,
When we're talking about red flags,
because I have done nothing wrong.
hey friends, I read a statistic this week that stopped me in my tracks. In the United States, 1 in 3 women will experience either physical or emotional abuse in their lifetime. And when that individual, she leaves the partner, their income drops by nearly 45%. And for caregivers, that stat doesn't get much better. Nearly 70% report symptoms of depression or burnout or never even ask for help after they leave the caregiving world. Today's guest, Julie Barth, lived that story, and she's proof that rebuilding isn't about bouncing back. It's about learning to breathe again and believe again. Julie, thanks for dropping by the show today. It's a privilege to have you on the SwagAbility Show.
And thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Just a note to our listeners, this conversation is most likely going to talk about cancer, caregiving, emotional abuse, and physical abuse. So if you're listening, please take care of yourself with what you do here during our conversation today. Julie, you're the author of Notes from a Blackberry, trauma survivor, the founder of the Colin James Barth Outreach, and a nonprofit helping women-led households in crisis. If there's someone that's only here for 30 seconds to 45 seconds of this podcast, what's one thing you would like them to know right now if they're in a position that you were?
I think to not be so harsh on themselves. As caregivers, I think we tend to take so much of the burden of everyone around us on, and to never think about all the good that we're doing. It almost feels selfish to, you know, either resent the position we're in, or to ask for help from anyone, or to really ever have any time for ourselves. I think when someone is relying on you, for their basic needs or emotional support or whatever that entails, they believe in you so much and they think that you can save them that you almost start to believe it yourself. So you put these super high expectations on yourself that aren't attainable. And then when you don't reach them, you feel like a failure all the time. I just remember if I wasn't with my kids, I felt guilty for not being with them. But when I was with them, I felt guilty for not being with my husband. And as a woman, not only is it hard to ask for help, but you feel as if you let one person in, give one little piece to somebody, take care of that, the whole thing is going to melt. If you don't have total control over the entire package, then you
Mm.
feel like you've lost all control. So I guess the one thing that I can hope for people is that they give themselves the same grace that they would give to somebody else sitting in their shoes, instead of always thinking that they're failing people.
That's powerful. Well, you've experienced the kind of caregiving that changes you forever, caring for a husband facing terminal cancer while raising 4 small children and navigating your daughter's rare genetic condition. And you started Notes from a Blackberry while sitting through a chemo session, quietly typing as you wrote, so you wouldn't disturb Colin. What compelled you to start writing? And what were you afraid of forgetting if you didn't take these notes?
We had just come off of my daughter. She was eventually diagnosed with primordial dwarfism, but when she was born, it was 4 years of not knowing what was going on, bringing her in for doctor's appointments, and literally just thinking she had a cold. And the next thing I know, she was flatlining. And traveling around the United States, we were lied to, medical malpractice. So I was just coming off of all of that, and she was starting to soar. And right as she began to soar, we found out that my husband had cancer. So I would go to his appointments with him, and anybody who has, I call it the chemo world that you don't even understand till you're there.
Yeah.
They set you in a little chair next to the person you're with, and you just sit there and you can almost like feel the gravity of all of it. And nurses try and make light, so they come over and they have conversations with you, and and I would find myself just throwing up on them, like, and then my daughter, and just it was like I had this story to tell, but I was telling random strangers, and it felt like I just kept saying the same thing over and over. And so I finally just sat back and said, you know what, I don't even know what compelled me. I just thought, I'm going to write this all down. So I
Mm.
started telling her story. And then I guess in the back of my head, somewhere when it flowed into Colin's story, I thought, my children, my youngest was 6 months at the time, my oldest was 10. And I thought, My kids are never going to know him." I didn't want to believe that, but realistically, I kind of knew. Um, so I started telling, the story of us, because I think as adults, you always think there's time to tell your kids, and you almost think that they learn, through genetics where they came from and their parents' stories, because you don't tell them, and then time runs out. And I just wanted them to know not just our past, but the present and how hard he was fighting to be there.
Yeah. When you reopened them, those files, I don't know how many years later it may have been. What kind of emotions came rushing back, and did rereading them help you heal or reopen wounds that you thought had closed?
It was about 12 years afterward. And, it was after going through, Tatum had cancer after the book, and, having the emotional abuse of the second marriage. I remember reading it almost to the point of being numb. And because I had, when I left my hometown, got remarried, I left everything in my past. I thought, well, if I just don't acknowledge it, it won't exist. I didn't want to be me. I was just going to start a brand new life, forget the old one. So it was almost as if I was re like rediscovering myself. And I will say that I was reading the book almost as someone who comes to the table who doesn't know my story reads it. I was shocked at some of the things because I was on survival mode. I wasn't there really. I was there, but I was running through the motions. So when I read it, because I've read it several times, my first thought was, gosh, the crazy things didn't even start yet,
Yeah.
in my life. And my second thought was, I can picture, it's weird when you hear your story because there's an audio version of it. And it's almost as if I picture somebody else. Like when I listen to the book, I don't picture myself doing it. I picture somebody else. So I guess that's how like out of body it was for me during that time, that a lot of it I don't remember. And if I do remember, I view it from the outside instead of internally now.
You said that caregivers often believe they can save the person they love, but in the end, that's a burden no one can carry. How did you balance hope and reality during those months? And what did that experience teach you about love and even letting go?
Well, I think that right out the gate, you have hope. That's all you have is hope. You want them to be here. You want them to stay at any cost. You think the worst thing in the entire world could possibly be to lose somebody, to lose the person you love. But along the road, you find out that there are worse things than losing somebody physically. Um, I think the hardest part was when my hope turned from hoping that he stayed to hoping that he would go. And, that's a burden, I think, that's even harder than saving someone, because you you're so torn by wanting them to stay, but you also want them to go at the same time. So there's this internal fight within yourself. And then when they go, there's this guilt at ever wishing that they weren't here anymore. But you don't it took me
Yeah.
many, many years to recognize how truly guilty I felt for feeling resentment that I was saddled with watching him die, and resentment that he wouldn't give up. I mean, how horrible is that to say? But he was He couldn't see, his faculties were gone, and rightly so, he wasn't going. And it was, there was an angst in me, like upset that he was still here. And then I was upset with myself that I was upset that he was still here. So there are very complex feelings in all of it when the hope switches from hoping they're here to hoping they're not here. And that switch changes your outlook on life forever. I used to be a very big hypochondriac and think, oh, the worst thing that could happen is dying. And now I recognize that that's not the worst thing that can happen. Yes, it's sad and it's horrible, but there are many other things that can go on, that are so hard to watch, and the suffering that happens.
Yeah. It's not an easy world, and just listening to you go back through that in your own mind as you're thinking is heartbreaking as a host to hear you have to relive those. So thank you for sharing that. When you look back, um, what do you wish maybe you'd known about caregiving or caring for yourself, while at the same time caring for someone else?
I think the hardest part for me, when people read my book, they always say, "Gosh, I didn't know how lonely you were." And if somebody had come to me at that point and said, "Are you lonely?" I would have said, "No, absolutely not." But I think when you're in a caregiving position, you lose touch with the real world. You lose touch with your friends. You stop checking in with them, and necessarily people, they don't tell you their good news anymore, because they feel as if I tell them my good news, then I'm bragging, or they're going through such a hard time. But really all that does is make you feel like nobody else's life is going on, or they're not sharing anymore. And then it just creates this huge buffer and barrier in between you, your friends, your family, and the real world. And I wish I had seen it at that point, because what ended up happening is, as they pulled away, I was more than happy to push them away. And then the resentment started. And I'm one of those people that just, if something's too much, I'm out. Like, I can't do this, I'm leaving. And I really had this perspective that people didn't want me around, that they didn't want to hear my sadness, that they couldn't possibly understand it. So I wasn't even going to try. And instead of accepting help from other people, being honest about how I felt, asking, telling someone that I was more than I can handle, I just kept playing this, "Oh, no, everything's fine here. Don't look over here." And I was playing a person that I really wasn't on the inside. And I think that it took me many years to get past that and think, people didn't walk away from me. I pushed, and then I walked. Um, so I wish I had known that I was the one that closed myself off to a great extent. Not that there weren't people that didn't close me off, but a lot of it was perpetuated by me worrying what they were thinking about me feeling as if they were judging me, when in reality, I don't think anyone could have ever judged me as harshly as I did myself. And I put that on other people.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've got to get your hands on uh, the book she's written, Notes from a Blackberry. I'm able to, as a host, listen to these answers, but I'm listening to them in light of reading the context of the full book. And so I highly recommend you go out and get a copy of the book. I think it's a great self help. I think it's a great um, helping put things in perspective. And you do a great job describing the inner fight that's within you, and just sharing your memoir. So, um, yeah. Let's talk about Tate for a bit. Your daughter Tate, I think she went through over 40 surgeries, if I'm not mistaken, in cancer. Yet now she's an artist sharing her light online. How's watching her create changed your understanding of resilience and beauty in imperfection?
She, it's funny. Tatum is, there's no reason why she's here. As you read the book, you only read part one, part two got even dicier. I literally watched her die in front of me more times than I care to talk about, but there's still that part of her that just wants so badly to be a part of the world. And her art, she just perfected on her own. She is, the smallest person I know, but has the largest personality I know. And it's not an overbearing personality. She just has this way about her where, she's very limited in being able to communicate because she lost her vocal cords, or they were, damaged. She lost her ability to walk around a lot, but she is the most stubborn human being in the world. And sometimes when we go toe to toe, there's that Tatum, I'll tell her something, and right out the gate I can see her face just be like, nope. And as much as it frustrates me, I think that is the reason why she is still here, because she listens. She's a bit like me in this. I'll listen to what you have to say, and I'll like let it play around for a little bit, but then I'll be like, nah. And I'll choose not to go with it. And that is how Tatum approaches life. Like, I mean, from day one, they said she wouldn't be born, then she wasn't going to sit up, then she wasn't going to talk, then she was, anytime somebody said she couldn't do something, she did it, not in a bragging way, just in a, oh yeah, watch me kind of way. And she really, she is like no one I've ever met in my life. She's given me such a perspective on the world, on what's important about, really our responsibility in the world and how to take care of other people. Because even though she is who she is the first person to find something when I can't find it. Or, she'll be standing there with my keys as I'm trying to leave the house because she's already found them, knowing that I needed them. She's just she is a miracle in every sense, and I'm not just saying that. She just really is.
For parents that may be watching this and they're raising children with what the world classifies as special needs, what encouragement or perspective has helped you most as you've watched Tate grow that maybe you can pass on to those that are just coming into this for the first time in their lives?
I think that we all like to believe that doctors know everything, but they don't. I think that when you get into the special needs realm, specialists, you have all these specialties. You have the occupational and the physical, and each one of those people comes to the table with their goals for your child. And they're wonderful goals. And I think they're, I couldn't be in that medical field doing that. But as a special needs parent, don't ever second guess yourself. Don't ever, sacrifice what you want for your child over what somebody else tells you that your child needs. Everyone was very, oh, Tatum needs to, count to 10. She needs to. And I fought against it a lot because I thought, you know, I know what's important for me, for my family, and I want her to be able to do everything that she wants to do, not what you want for her to do. And I think there's a big discrepancy in that. I was never concerned about anything besides her being here. When she was a baby, she had a trach, so the nurses would say she can't go to the pool. The doctors would say she can't be in crowds, and my perspective was always, well, why are we preserving a life if we're not going to let her live it? So I had so many
Mhm.
people very upset with me for many, many years because I wasn't following protocol, because I wasn't taking her in for her checkup when she needed it, or I, didn't take her to OT, or I didn't. So to those of you out there as a parent, your heart is telling you what your child wants and needs. I'm not saying debunk what other people are saying. I'm not saying make stupid choices, but I am saying you know your child best, you know what they need, and you and your child can decide what is important in life, not somebody from the outside telling you what they want from your child.
You've survived different kinds of battles, years of emotional and financial abuse that have left deep scars. Um, in your book, you said you sensed something was wrong by day two. What were those early flags that you were noticing? And what would you tell someone today who feels the same inner thoughts but keeps hoping things will improve?
I think hope is one of the strongest things humans have, and I think it's one of the most detrimental things at the same time when you don't recognize that hope is keeping you stuck. Um, I noticed right out the gate that things weren't what they should have been, but yet I think that you do things for a reason, whether you recognize it or not. And sometimes you get to get beyond the situation to see what your motives were behind it, because sometimes the whole plan isn't even visible to you. And I think that if you keep going in circles and something isn't working, no matter how hard you try to fix it, you can't make it work. And in situations when you're with somebody who's emotionally abusive or physically abusive, they exert control over you. And the reason why you can't fix it is because they want you in that position. They are intentionally throwing, sabotaging you and putting you so that you land back in the same space every time, no matter how you twist, how you turn. So you can hope for something and you can wish it could happen. But the problem is that what you're hoping for, you're probably hoping for with the wrong person. There are millions of people out there, whether that's a romantic partner, whether that's a parent, whoever it is. If you find in a relationship that you've tried, honestly, if you sit down and you say to yourself, you've tried your hardest, you've done what you could, but it's not working because it's not supposed to work. That is not good for you. The cycle is there, and the only way to break a cycle is to break out of it.
Can you put some context? I know, again, I'm reading into it, having read the book. Can you put some context to me asking that question, having it being a second relationship you were in, and share as much or as little as you like, those watching to know what we talk about when we're talking about red flags and just knowing something's not right.
So usually when you approach a situation with somebody, you know where things are headed. There might be a little bit of outliers. You might say something and it upsets somebody and you're like, "Oh," and you can backstep. If you find that, I would approach a situation and I would have a plan in my head. Okay, I'm going to say A, B, and C, and I would even like have to map it out to try and downplay it and like almost have an answer for everything so that it wouldn't turn into an argument, because it would always turn into an argument.
This is a second relationship we're speaking of.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And I think it's just that constant state of confusion. Like, why won't this work? No matter how, like I said, a red flag is if you always look at a situation and the story that they're telling is out here and your story is over here, and they really feel as if we're not even talking about the same thing. It's like you're not playing on the same playing field, and you can't play a game with somebody who's not on the same field as you. And that kind of red flag, I think you just kind of you gaslight yourself and you think, "Oh, well, I just misunderstood that," or, "Oh, well, I just shouldn't have said one word of it," or but I can honestly say in every other relationship I've been in my life, I'm a pretty reasonable person. I even if I miscommunicate, there's always room to back up and say, "Okay, I apologize. Let's go back and start from here." But it would
Right.
just go from 0 to 100, and there was no fixing it, and there was no takebacks, and there was no, "I think you misunderstood me." It was just an explosion that was meant to shut me up so I didn't talk about it again, because that was the ultimate goal, is let's not talk about this again. I don't want to answer your question. You're not getting what you want. And if I just explode on you, you won't ask me again. You won't question me again. You won't even know why you won't question me again. But I threaten you enough that you are not going to second guess me ever again. And that was the way that you're just not allowed to ask any questions.
Uh, we throw the word, yeah, you're right. We throw the word around narcissistic so much in our society, like, oh, he's so narcissistic. But uh, truly explain and give a definition of what you lived through with someone that was a narcissist. And we've talked about the red flags, but there'll be women right now, maybe, that listen that aren't ready to step out. So I guess the question's twofold. Maybe talk about truly what narcissism is from what you experienced, and then talk about how at least someone can maybe stay safe today until they're ready to make that decision to move, because obviously it takes some time to get things lined up.
Well, and I think that when I got married 15 years ago, narcissists were not, it wasn't out there. The word wasn't out there. Nobody really
Mhm.
knew what it was. I'm a psychology major, so I think I've covered it in a psychology class. I remember reading a book, I think it was called The Wizard of Oz, and it was like a light bulb went out in my head, and it explained everything that was confusing me about my relationship and about my communications with him. It was like a light bulb went off. When we say things like, I hear my kids say it all the time, oh, you're a narcissist. And we have saturated the word narcissism to a point where we've diluted the truly toxic and dangerous nature of a narcissist. A narcissist is someone with something called narcissistic personality disorder. It's not just somebody who's selfish. It's not somebody who's trying to shout you down. It's
Right.
not somebody, it's not a flippant thing. It is a diagnosable illness where the person who is a narcissist, it goes back to the whole, they're selfish. They, by definition, are lacking the essential human trait called empathy, which means that they cannot feel what you feel. Now, when you approach somebody, as a human, we are able to alter our behaviors to other people because we sense how we're making them feel. We do not want to make them suffer. We put ourselves literally into their thought process to say, "Oh, I'm hurting this person." Someone with narcissistic personality does not have that ability. And even if they can do that, what they do is they use those emotions in order to manipulate you to get you to do what they want you to do. So they are the most dangerous individuals in the entire world because they will sense your weakness. They will use you against it. They will use it against you. They're highly intelligent in most cases. They know what works, and they have no bounds. And when you discover them, when you discover what works, when you have something to combat them, they have to ramp it up. They have to get more dangerous. They have to get more punitive. They have discovered a way to make you tick, and it's individual to every single person that they meet. So they are literally tailoring how they are victimizing you according to your biggest insecurities and weaknesses. If we could produce an army of people like that, they would be invincible. And that is, as a society, I fear that is what we are doing, is we are creating narcissism in people that might not have originally had it. It's just this complete lack of concern for anybody else. Um, if you notice that somebody, and I would say, if we're talking about narcissism, I would say that my ex was almost to the point of sociopathic. And the difference between a narcissist and someone who's a sociopath is that narcissists use you to their advantage. Sociopaths not only use you to their advantage, they enjoy watching you suffer. They find delight in watching other people suffer and be incited and hurt. And that is the true nature of these people, that they want to see you in pain. They get delight from watching you suffer.
Yeah, it truly is a sickness. Like um, listening to some of the things that you've talked about that your ex would do. Um, yeah, cunning, sick, and depraved is really the description of it. And for those listening out there, they're all of a sudden saying, some of these things they're talking about are really starting to, foreshadow what I live with. What was your first conversation, Julie, to someone, or to start the out of that? Was it to a best friend? Is it to mental health? Or is it to the individual you're with and then you're gone? Uh, Because there's got to be a conversation that starts somewhere, right?
Yeah, I would definitely not have that conversation. If you even feel as if you're dealing with somebody who is this caliber, do not have a conversation with them because they will convince you out of it every time. Just as you're about to unveil them, they will get dangerous. If you are about to leave them, they will all of a sudden turn around and be nice. They are so good at discovering exactly what you need. I liken it to someone choking you out, right? And just as about you're about to pass out, what they do is they'll let go. And all of a sudden, they almost become your savior, as insidious as that is, because they are no longer choking you. You feel as if they're the one saving you. On top of that, these people don't just stop with you. They not only want to make you suffer in front of them, they will do everything behind your back to make a case that you're crazy, that there's something wrong with you, that you are somehow abusing them. They will turn the tables and tell everybody behind your back that you are doing the exact thing to them that they are doing to you. And you will not even know it because people will not tell you what's going on because they really will think you're crazy because you're acting crazy because they're getting you to react. So, my
Mm.
advice to anybody who is in this position is stop making excuses. Stop thinking you can control anyone else's behavior. Stop thinking you can minimize the carnage that this person is causing to you in your world. Stop thinking that they're going to come back and be the person you want them to be, and stop making them the person that you think they are. Yes, they really are doing these things behind your back. Yes, they are probably lying to your face. Yes, they are telling everyone you're crazy. And no, you cannot trust people because the very people that I thought I could trust were under the assumption that everything he was telling them was the truth. So anything I had to say fell underneath the radar because to them, I was crazy. I was behaving crazy. And now I'm saying, oh, he's crazy. And they're like, okay, you're the crazy one. We've already heard it all. So do not go to someone you know, go to a third party. I would not discuss it with anyone unless you truly know that they're an ally. And if you really are questioning and you wonder, because I did, am I crazy? Is this me? Because I was doing things I had never done. Do see a professional. Tell them your story. Be honest with them. Don't sugarcoat what you've done. Don't downplay what they've done. Tell the honest truth, and you will get an honest answer.
That leads perfectly in kind of what I wanted to ask you in the book. You said exposing an abuser can mean exposing your own worst moments, the yelling, the begging, the loss of self control that survivors later regret. Um, how do you learn to separate what you did from who you truly are?
It takes a long time. And reading my book, that was a part of rediscovering who I was. I had to step away from the people that I was trying so hard to prove that I wasn't the bad guy. I had to get to a point in my life where I had to stop doing this apology tour. I would apologize to people all the time because I knew, first of all, that I had acted crazy in front of them. Second of all, that he was showing people my text messages. He was videotaping me. He was calling me names. And I felt this constant need to prove that he was wrong, to apologize for being over emotional. It was this constant like trying to make up for something that I've done wrong. And when I finally just walked and said, it does feel like you're going to lose everything. It feels like you lose friends and family. But what I learned on the other side of it is if they were my friends, if they were my family, they would have given me the floor to talk. They would have come to me, told me what they know, asked me if it was true. And if I lost people, then I never had them to begin with. And that is a very hard thing to accept because I'm talking about people that I've known from grammar school on. Will I ever be able to mend those fences? I don't know. And I don't care because I have done nothing wrong. And it's taken me 3 years, if not more, to recognize that I don't have to apologize to anybody but myself for the way that I behaved and the things that I did, because the only one that got hurt is me. I am the only person that really got hurt. If people walked away, again, they were never there to begin with. And the people that stayed are truly, I can't love those people and appreciate those people more in my life. I feel blessed every day for the people that stuck around, that I can always trust and that will always have my back. And I know who they are now.
Is there a mantra or a truth that you kind of lean on when shame tries to creep back in?
I think it's that I know I'm a good person. I do. It took me a long time to really examine that. I had a lot of, survivor's guilt. I lied to Colin a lot when he was dying, necessarily. He'd say, "Are we going to chemo?" And oh, yeah, 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 knowing full well I wasn't. I lied to my best friend for 2 years. I fought with doctors. I've done things that I never thought I would because I'm used to be a very soft-spoken person. I was a pleaser. Um, I think that I've come full circle to know that if I have hurt anyone, I never meant to. I never set out to. And I know that everything that I've done to get to where I am in life, I've done for the right reasons and because I want to do the right thing. And I have to be okay with that because even if it doesn't end up the way that you want it to, because things don't go the way you want them to, you can never beat yourself up for making a decision if you made it with good intentions, hoping that it would turn out correct.
Uh, you said your worst day now is still better than your best day when you were stuck. That's, to me, an incredible statement. And so many people see resilience as bouncing back, but you reframed it. And you say it's rebuilding back on new ground. It's not bouncing back, it's rebuilding on new ground. Um, what does resilience look like for you today? And how do you practice those things when life still throws you curveballs?
I can honestly say the one thing that I feel every day that I don't remember ever feeling, even when I was growing up, because I am a pleaser and it's hard to find peace. And I know everybody's searching for happiness. Everyone wants to be happy. And I will tell you that I am so content with peace. Just to wake up every day, not feeling like someone or something is chasing me, not to take it so personally. I used to feel like illness was happening to me, that, things that somehow if there, whatever God you believe in, whether that's the universe, that some greater power was doing it to me. I don't feel that way anymore. I don't feel as if everything I've been through is a burden. I now feel as if something has been whispering to me my entire life that I have a purpose here. And
Amen.
I am a very strong-willed human. And I fought against it for my all of my years here. It was like I would hear a calling to do something, and it either seemed out of character, or it seemed too hard, or it seemed that I just didn't want to do it. And it's almost as if I keep going through these same scenarios in my life because I'm here to not only learn a lesson, but to teach a lesson. So I don't feel like anyone's doing anything to me anymore. I feel like I've been shown a different side of the way that life is and the way life could be. And it's my purpose to help other people to not feel so downtrodden and to feel so out of control and to feel so helpless because everybody has the ability to control certain things in their life. Not everything, but when you control the things that you can and leave the rest behind that you can't do anything about, it's such a powerful feeling and you can make a difference. I know we had this conversation, before recording, and you said something about, well, you can't change things. And I said, you can. Maybe I'm not going to be able to change big things, but anytime you change someone else's life, they change everyone else they touch. So any goodness that you create on this earth is change, and it's a positive change. And there's no bigger power than small changes turning into big ones. So that's the way I look at life now. I'm just at peace and not worried about the other shoe that's going to drop anymore.
Amen. Because that was reading your book at the beginning, listening to that. I thought, wow, that must have been such a heavy thought process to think like that. And to hear you come out the other side of it, and you have so much innate value that you've been uh, given and so much to share. And I think you're doing a phenomenal job at it. One of those things, and I'm cognizant of the time here before I let you go, but you talk about a 3-step grounding practice. Would you expand briefly on that and what that would look like, um, putting it into practice for someone who feels like they're being overwhelmed?
Um, I think that you just want to, when you're presented with a problem, as I said, there's things that you can do something about, and there's things that you can't do anything about. So when a problem comes to me, I take it apart. And whatever it is that I can't change, whether that's illness or someone else's behavior, I let that part go. Because when you lump it all together, you can't tackle it. So I take that piece that I can control, and once I have that piece I can control, I try and change whatever it is about that, so that when you're in a position where you're actually taking action, you feel more powerful in doing it. If you sit and you worry about something, it doesn't happen. So I just try and take a situation apart, find what I can control, then I take that piece and I set goals for myself. And once you have one goal, it turns into two, into three. I think just not looking at the overwhelming nature of something and getting
Yeah.
bogged down by things that you can't do anything about.
And I'm so glad we had that, because you're right. We have the power to change something. Um, we, we make changes every day. It's just that feeling of being stuck. Um, I think knowing that there is an out. I think the overwhelming part is where so many people get stuck. Um, you've written the books. I didn't forgot about the second one, but Notes from a Blackberry, and the second one, Thorns, Thorns
It's
to Blossoms.
from blackberries to thorns.
Okay, yeah, I thought there was. Um, where can someone get a hold of these resources today?
Well, the
And
second one hasn't been released yet.
okay,
I'm working on it. Yeah, I keep saying it's coming out in fall. Yeah, and people are like, it's fall. So I'm working on it. But if you go to my website, juliebarthauthor.com, it's my first name, last name, and then author. There are tabs on there for my books, podcasts, my appearances, and then my daughter's art, Tatum, which I told you about. All of her art is there as well. And the proceeds from her art go to fund the Colin James Barth Outreach, which is my charity. So all the tabs are there. There's many ways to get involved. We're always looking for companies who are willing to take on women who want to work remotely and more gainful opportunities than just minimum wage, and get involved when they can while they're still at home. And, when you were asking what steps you can take, I am the person that answers all of the emails. So if you need help, you know, if you're just looking for somebody to help commiserate, or at least to, give you, yes, you are right on the right track, or actionable steps. I am here, and I'm the only one that mans it. And when people reach out to me, it gives me fuel to keep going. There's nothing I love more than when someone hears what I have to say and does reach out, whether that is for help, whether that is to get involved, or just to say, I heard what you have to say and it meant something. As somebody who's out there trying to do good work, just that little nugget of you made a difference is all you need to continue to try and make a bigger difference.
absolutely. And a call to action for you is that we know it takes finances to run an organization and to truly make a difference. And when I stumbled across those statistics that I'd read, 1 in 3 women that are affected, and then wages go down 45% for them. Um, I think your organization has so much to give, and if you're able to, and you're listening to this, please visit. Is it juliebarthauthor.com to make a donation, or how can someone make not only get your book, but how can someone make a financial donation to increase the amount of work that Collins Outreach can have?
So when you go to my website, again, there's tabs that you can go to. It'll shoot off to our it's called the cjboutreach.org. But again, there's a tab for that. And again, my daughter, who the one that has special needs, she does wonderful artwork and jewelry, and all of her products are being sold. If you like a design, we can put it on a t-shirt or anything else. And actually, we're just launching a new campaign right now. We're trying to return to holiday cards. So she's done a whole line of Christmas cards. So we're testing them out. I'm posting them. If you follow me at Julie Barth on Facebook, or Julie Barth Author on Instagram, which is on my website as well. We're trying out different designs that she's drawn, and hoping to get some pre-orders so we know how many people are going to be involved. And we're really excited about the campaign. And Tatum, when people buy stuff from her, you can't be here to see her face, but I can. And it she wants to give back, and that's why we set up what we did, because she believes in the charity as well. The charity really was formed to help the many versions of me, because there have been many versions of myself who have needed help, and everyone goes to government, but you have to lose it all to get anything. So we believe that no woman should have to jeopardize their children's safety because they can't pay for something, legal defense, mortgage, whatever it is. So what we try and do is match you with other organizations that you're eligible for, and whatever you're not eligible for, we try to step in. So any way you'd like to get involved, we're always looking for volunteers. Anyway.
That's a wonderful, wonderful organization. I can't say enough about it. And I'm excited for your second book that's coming out as well. Just before I let you go, one last question that may help a lot of people out there who may hear this. Finish this sentence for me, if you will. Healing is.
Finding yourself again, remembering who you are. And I think when women come to me, they say to me, like, you helped me so much, or I couldn't have done it without you. And my answer to them is always, you couldn't have done it without you. And I just reminded you of who you were to begin with.
Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, Julie Barth, and we appreciate your time. All those links will be found in the show notes, and I highly would recommend that you pick up some of Tate's art and get involved with the Colin James Barth outreach. Such a need today. Julie, all the best to you. Thank you for taking a few minutes of being on the show with us.
Of course. Yeah. I'd love to come back again anytime.
We want to have a 2.0 for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, if SwagAbility is of interest to you and you wonder what we do, our goal is to help individuals with disabilities who have gone through trauma, or for caregivers that are facing burnout. Our whole desire is to see people to thrive wherever life finds them. And so until next time, friends, stay safe, stay healthy, stay strong, and remember, thrive wherever life finds you. Swags out.